As many people here know, there are several ways to set up a foundation, but the basic model always has 4 parts. A donor or settler, you, your family, the business, the trustees, the individual, the family, good to have an outsider, perhaps a lawyer or a family friend. And the charitable purposes, which sets out the type of public benefit, the causes to be supported, or just it can be general purposes, and oddly enough, the Charity Commission is very content with that. And finally, the trust deed, which is the charity's constitution. And the Charity Commission has some very good examples to copy from. Now, if people use a professional help to set up a trust, they don't have to. As a guideline, only your lawyer might bill you for something like £1,500 plus VAT. Your accountant's annual charge might then be up to £1,000 plus VAT. And if there's a goodly sum to invest, there'll also be management fees for that. My co-trustees were well known to me, and they haven't changed much over the years. My legal advisor, who was a specialist in charity law, a senior partner of a local accountancy firm that looks after my finances. And as we moved to funding medical research, we brought in a medical trustee, and at the same time, there were some class actions going on in the States at the time. At the same time, we incorporated the charity to provide protection for all the trustees. And I wish we'd done that right from the start. Our trustees are unpaid, except when acting in an advisory capacity. In theory, they may charge expenses, but only one of them, who travels to Henley, where I live, from Scotland, does charge expenses, and she only does that if she can't combine the visit with something else that she's doing down south. The foundation employs a part-time administrator, currently half a day a week, but it has been up to half-time. And of course, there's some minimal expenses. I chair the trustee meetings, perhaps more informally than I did in my business years. We meet 3 times a year for 2 to 3 hours. Agenda items include project reports, recommended proposals, and both these items can have outside presenters to give the information, and one-line summaries of all the proposals we have received in our selected field. We also always start with the financial statement, and including cash flow, and a report on our investments, so we know how much we've got to play with. And our money is, as I think I've said, managed for us. Trustees are sensitive that all the money comes from me, so they tend to listen especially carefully to my recommendations. But they do not rubber stamp. They are their own people, and they sometimes reject my recommendations, and that's important to me. I do have delegated authority to write small cheques, but I seldom use it because with only 4 of us, we achieve near 100% attendance, and I think that's what trustees should always be aiming for. The far distant trustee occasionally attends via conference call, and for one urgent but uncontentious meeting, that was something to do with incorporation, we had the whole thing on a conference call. So we try to be pretty close to what we're doing. The startup legalities were pretty cumbersome, so by the time we got through those, we were raring to go. And the first few grants were pretty casual, They were to a friend's charity, somebody I knew would spend the money wisely, and it was in fact for a project in Bermuda. I've never done anything but like that since. And of course in response to the many, many applications. And once our tight focus became known, a good website makes a lot of difference. But the flood of unsuitable applications then dried up. There's an informal network among foundations. I'm sure you're aware of that. We often guide unsuccessful applicants to other, more suitable sources of support. And where appropriate, we also suggest that applicants get together with similar projects. There's too much to do to encourage reinventing the wheel. I always advise people to see what others are doing and join up if at all possible. It took a couple of years to get organised, a couple of years, and that's really to think through what I wanted to achieve, what I wanted to get. And each person, each philanthropist needs to think through what they want to achieve with their donations, the social impact. And whether it's children or disability or animals or the elderly or green issues or the developing world, everybody knows what the sort of things that they're interested in. And this is where community foundations can really help. For it is a struggle to find the charities that fit. GuideStar UK, The Big Give, and others can help find appropriate charities. The Shirley Foundation's mission is to be pioneering. I've always been in research, such pioneering. No matter how worthy, we don't just do more of the same. And strategic, by which I mean that if successful in pioneering projects, if they were all successful, I'd say we were not taking enough risk, but if successful, make a real difference. And in the two fields that I know and care about, and that is information technology, my professional discipline, and autism, which was my late son's disorder. The vast bulk has gone to autism. Giles was our only child, a beautiful baby who turned into a wild, unmanageable toddler. He had some relatively calm years, but flipped completely at puberty, much too early. And after that, we couldn't find any secondary schooling for him at all that would take him. And so the story, his life story, really just went south. And when he was 13, I'd had him at home then, I broke down completely, and both of us finished up in hospital. I came out of mine after a month and was back at work within the year, but he stayed in a locked ward of an old-style subnormality hospital for 11 years. Now, my first big autism project had Giles as the first resident in the first home of the first charity that I set up. And it now supports 52 adults, all with autism and what is euphemistically called challenging behaviour. I believe that giving is a social and cultural activity, not just a financial transaction.